Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Dick Deming. I'm Medical Director of Mercy One Cancer Center and the founder of Above and Beyond Cancer. Welcome to our weekly cancer education series. It's brought to you in part from a grant from the Rosalie and Sherry Exline Ziegler Fund. And my guest tonight is Brittany Overton. Welcome, Brittany.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So Brittany is from Iowa. She grew up and went to high school in North Tama, and then got her degree in radiation technology, and then advanced degree in radiation therapy technology, and has been a radiation therapist, which is a person who gives radiation treatments in a radiation oncology department.
Yes.
And now has branched off into creating these wonderful documentary videos to help patients and people and individuals create a legacy.
Yes.
So
thank you for that introduction.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here. So what is a legacy? What does that mean? A legacy?
So a legacy, I feel like a legacy, when we hear that, it sounds almost like something tangible, right? Like something that you can hold, or, finances and things like that. But really a legacy can be passed on, through our stories is the biggest, biggest impact that we can make to our family and friends is to pass our legacy on to our loved ones.
So in many ways, it's how are we remembered by others after we're gone?
Right.
And you're right. Sometimes you talk about legacy giving, where you've left money to somebody after you've gone, but legacy has a much bigger, deeper meaning.
Absolutely.
What do you represent, and how can you leave that to others? And so we leave things behind. Obviously, we leave our genes behind and the prodigy that we've left, but we leave some physical remnants behind, whether it's money or items we give, but we are part so much bigger than that.
Yes.
And part of it's what did we represent? What was important to us?
Right. And what are our stories and our values? And I really want to encourage people to, take time with their loved ones and really hear their stories while they're still here. So once we're gone, our stories are gone too. And so my push with these documentaries is to, be able to leave our legacy behind with our families and our friends, where later down the line, somebody's great grandchildren can learn about who that person actually is, and to actually see a documentary and how they, thought about things or how they moved and things like that. And I feel like it gives, us who leave a legacy behind peace of mind that we won't be forgotten and that we'll leave something with our family.
And we're going to talk more about the making of the documentaries. But before I do that, I would imagine that your work experience with cancer patients and their families influenced where you are right now in your life.
It did, absolutely.
Yeah. So maybe how did you go into radiation therapy as an occupation first? What was there a background in medicine or a background in your family with cancer that kind of led you down that path into cancer treatment?
So I was in high school and I had some problems with my vision. And so I had gone to the University of Iowa for an MRI and found out I had a tumor on my optic nerve.
And you were how old?
I was 17 when I found that. So I had 32 radiation treatments at the University of Iowa. And at the time, I think it's because of my age. I didn't feel like it was, I felt like, it's okay. It's another thing that I'm doing, and everything will be okay. I don't think I really understood, necessarily the gravity of it. I saw my mom go through some hard times, and I think she felt some guilt as a mom where she had to see me go through that. And now as a parent, I can understand that. But in going through those treatments, I realized this is a really amazing field to get into. And I had such a great experience at the University of Iowa. And I saw Dr. Wadi there, and he was wonderful, and the therapists were great. And I thought, I think I want to do this as a career. And so
Yeah.
that was my
And as a 17-year-old going through, you're really kind of a special patient, and I'm sure they took great
they were
joy in
amazing.
being
Yes.
involved in helping you. What about when you were going through your treatment for your tumor?
Mhm.
Do you remember any interactions with other patients from the waiting room, or from just
Excuse me.
the whole process of going through 33 treatments? You interact with mostly at that center patients that are older, and mostly patients that have cancer as opposed to a benign tumor.
Yes. That's funny. I hadn't thought about this until now, until you asked me that. There was a woman that was always in the waiting room at the same time as me. And when I first started seeing her come, she had all of her hair. Um, and then as and progressed, she started to lose her hair. And I actually remember feeling kind of guilty that I didn't lose any hair. And I felt, I guess I felt bad that I still had my hair, and I almost wish that I could be more, oh, what's the word I'm looking for?
And some might call that sort of like almost survivor's guilt, that you were blessed inappropriately, that you were
Yes, yes.
there, but for the grace of God go I, and others next to you were having a more difficult time.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
But she was wonderful. I remember her being there every day waiting for treatments as well.
So 17, you're getting your treatments, and then it comes time you graduate from high school, and you got to start thinking, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? And that idea of being a technologist in a medical field, especially a radiation field, it was something that was kind of at the forefront, because
It really
it was
was.
only less than a year later you graduate from high school, probably.
Right. Yeah. And I think ever since that experience, I thought, this is really what I want to do, and what I see myself doing. So I went to x-ray school, and then I went to therapy school after that at the University of Iowa. And it was pretty amazing to be able to work alongside those therapists that were actually my therapists that had treated me. Exactly. So, and with the dosimetrist that had done my plan, and so it was pretty amazing to be taken underneath their wing as well, and they were able to teach me the ropes and show me what to do.
So obviously you're working with technology, and there's a lot of computer and using the keyboard and using the screen, but you're taking care of people.
Right.
So tell me, what have you learned about life from your experience of caring for patients with cancer and their families?
I would say, excuse me, working in the field of cancer treatment, and I'm sure you can understand this as well. You're treating the patient, but you're also treating their families as well, and so they're looking to you as somebody to help them through this pivotal time in their lives. And I feel like they're so honest at that time, and they just need that reassurance, and they need somebody to help guide them through the treatment. And as a therapist and as a doctor, and it's getting the patient to the other resources that they could use as well. Social work, other resources that we have as well, and just to help their family as a whole get through that process.
But when a patient comes in for radiation, unless they're going to get 33 treatments, I mean, you meet with them every day for 33 days in a row.
Yes.
Your interaction might be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but there's this, hi, how are you doing? As you escort them into the room and help them get set up.
Right.
What was the process how did you become comfortable and develop, what were your tricks to developing a rapport with the patient?
I think I felt, since I have been through radiation treatments too, and I had a mask when I had my radiation treatments, I felt like
You
I
might explain what a
had.
mask is
Oh,
for
sure.
people who don't know.
So a mask is basically a plastic material. It's molded around your face, and it actually adheres to the table. And so during radiation therapy, you don't want any kind of movement.
So it holds your head
So it really
very
holds your head,
still.
yes. And so the doctors can keep those, small margins, and you could just treat what you need to. So I had that mask during my treatment, and I felt like, especially with those, head and neck or brain patients, I could really relate to them and help them through that path.
Because it can be very claustrophobic. You can feel
Absolutely.
some people just get, oh my gosh, they feel like they're can't breathe and they get
Yes.
anxious.
Yes. And it's scary because it's, it's all new. But really, I think a lot of it is just listening to people and making sure they're comfortable and just really paying attention to what they need. And also, speaking with their family too as a whole, just to make sure that everybody feels comfortable.
Mhm. I would bet, though, you probably developed a way of chit chat as they, you walk them back to the room. You're seeing them every day. It's probably not just about making them comfortable in the face mask. It's how you doing? How's your day
Right.
going?
And it's, we really get to know about the patient because we're seeing them every day. And I feel like people open up about their family and they want to talk about, what are you doing for the weekend, or what are you doing for the holidays, and things like that. And I think every day just that conversation would really build, and you get to hear more of their stories. And that was amazing to me, is that everybody has a story. And so that's what I really realized working in radiation therapy and working with so many
And you
patients.
establish a real relationship over the course of weeks.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
And I would love when they would come back too. And people are so appreciative, and I would love to see patients on follow-up and just see how they're doing, and just really rally for them.
What about the process of taking care of patients toward the end of life, where that they have an incurable cancer, that you're maybe giving them some radiation to relieve some pain, but you know that the radiation is not going to necessarily prolong the life. How did you at that young age become comfortable being present, having conversations, listening, being empathetic in that situation with patients that you know are likely going to die within the next few weeks?
I think it's really just, you treat everybody the same. And even though those patients have a shorter time span, I mean, the reality is that none of us know how much time we really have. And we can wake up tomorrow, and tomorrow might be our last day. And so I think it's still just, really treating those people with respect, and just, and still holding a normal conversation with them too.
Right.
And I feel like a little bit of normalcy for them is appreciated. Especially during COVID, I know we had a lot of patients where they were in the hospital by themselves. There's no visitors. And so I think that interaction just between us and the patients was huge, because that was sometimes their only interaction with somebody throughout the day. Maybe on a screen, they would be able to FaceTime somebody, but it's just not the same. So, so I think it's just really listening to others and just being able to, strengthen that bond, and hearing their stories.
And show you care.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so that process of taking care of cancer patients, and also taking care of cancer patients who subsequently died, when did the idea that you wanted to help develop a process to help individuals do recordings while they're still here, with the specific idea that this is something that will last beyond their life on Earth?
So it was September of 2020. And
should we show a picture?
We could show that picture.
Let's show a
Yeah,
picture.
if that's okay.
Yeah, we showed it to me. It's a beautiful photograph.
Yeah. So it was 2020, and everything was on lockdown still at the hospital. So
Now you're one of the four blondes there, I bet.
yes, I am in the back left.
Okay.
And so this is my grandpa Jake.
Oh.
He was in the hospital, and he had stage 4 bladder cancer. The end of life policy was a little gray at the hospitals, and so that was the only exception.
What city is this photo
He
from?
was in Waterloo.
In Waterloo.
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously during COVID.
During COVID. So it was very hard to get in to see him. We made a lot of phone calls, a lot of pleas, and we said, we really think that this is the end of life time. We'd really like to see him.
And is this your mother's father?
It is. Yeah.
And is your mom? Is this
so
your
my
mom and your sisters?
So my mom is on the left side, where she's by me on the left, and then my sister Jamie is on the right, and then my sister Amber is down on the bottom right of the screen.
And how old is Grandpa in this photo?
So Grandpa was, oh goodness, 75. Don't quote me on that. Okay. I'd have to ask my mom.
Okay.
But we were granted permission to go see him, and I remember walking through the hospital that day, and I remember it was, COVID was such a weird time, so no other patients had visitors, and we were just so thankful to have that opportunity to sit with him. And during that time, all I had was my cell phone at the time. And I got that out, and I recorded his voice. And I thought, in my heart, I knew that this was probably going to be the last time that I would see him. Although we were hopeful he would come out of the hospital and he would be able to go home. But I thought, just in case, I just want to make sure I always have these stories from him. So I was able to ask him. I said, "Can you tell me the story on how you and Grandma had met, and what you thought about her?" And so he told me that story. And then he was also a strong Christian man. And so I said, "Can you tell me the story again about, how you became saved and about the Bible?" And those were things that were, his core values and those stories that I had heard before, but I just wanted to always have those in his voice. And that was the last time that I was able to see him. So he didn't make it home. But now I have this recording of his voice telling those stories. And sometimes I have to kind of amp myself up to listen to him, because it's hard to listen to, but I am so thankful that I have those stories. And I think after that is when I really realized the power of a story, and the power of having those stories from our loved ones. And so I feel like it's so important for families to have. And it's hard. It can be an awkward conversation. I remember being in the room with him, and we were talking about silly things like the weather, and it's like these things that really don't matter. But I think as humans, it's just a natural thing to try and fill in the conversation, fill in the silence and the gaps. But I just think it's so important to be intentional about getting those
Tell
stories.
me a little bit more about what you did with that recording. And I would assume you've shared that recording with the rest of your family.
Yes.
And have you used it in any other unusual ways, or how have your family members used it?
Our family, I sent it out to my family, and so everybody has that recording as well. I haven't done anything else quite yet with it, but it's there, and it's so nice to pull it up sometimes and just have that story in his voice.
So that was maybe the first time that you documented audio or visual on someone that you knew was not long for this side of the transition, and then eventually you've transitioned into creating a whole process of creating audio video
Yes.
recordings and other things. Maybe talk a little bit about that transition, and then I want to hear about how you actually do it. And
Sure.
what's the process of talking to someone and figuring out how to record and what to say and how to edit.
Yes. So I have those audio recordings from my grandpa, and I have always for the last 10 years done photography. And I thought, why can't we, or why shouldn't we mix the audio with video or photos and just really complete somebody's story? And so I really felt like there's such a need for this, and I have just such a passion to record people's stories. And so I've started, instead of just audio, I've started doing a whole video, because I feel like it's so important even just to see somebody's movements and how they their expressions and how they think about things. I feel like really plays out more in a video versus just photos or just audio recordings.
Were you ever a fan of StoryCorps? Do you know?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I love
So
StoryCorps.
yeah,
Yes.
so that's comes out of National Public Radio, and
hmm
there was audio, and I think they've done some that are video, but mostly it's just getting people in a room in a sound booth and encouraging them to have a conversation, and then it's stored in the Library of Congress.
It's so amazing. Yes.
Yeah, I participated in a
Oh, you did?
StoryCorps. They came to Des Moines, and
Okay.
actually, it was a conversation with a patient's parents. And
Okay.
the patient had passed away, and we were talking about the importance of Charlie and their lives and my life, and kind of reminiscing and kind of the whole process. But the importance of not only in that situation, if you weren't in that booth at that time, that conversation may never have happened.
hmm
And then even if you did have the conversation, unless you were in a place with the sound booth, it wouldn't have been recorded.
Right.
And it would have been lasted only as long as the memories of those of us in the room. But to actually put a microphone in front of somebody might create memories that wouldn't have happened if you didn't sit them down, put a
Yes.
microphone and say, here's what we're going to talk about. But then it also wouldn't have outlived the memory of the people in the room if it weren't for the microphone.
Absolutely. So I feel like it's sometimes it's hard to have those conversations with your loved one, especially if there's a serious illness involved. And so these are just great opportunities for families to get together and just have these meaningful conversations. I recently had a session where I had a woman and her family. There was 5 kids and 3 grandkids, and they were all able to get together, and they all said something. They said, tell me about your mom, tell me what you love about her. And then I had her say that about her kids too. Tell me about your kids, and what are you proud of them for? And so having them sit together and have these conversations that probably wouldn't have happened, or you think, oh, they already know that about me, or they already know how I feel, but they might not. And so sometimes it's nice to just hear it and to celebrate somebody before it's too late. And I just feel like there's so much opportunity there for families to really bond and have those conversations.
What are some of the barriers or the resistance that some people might have about doing it? It's like some people never want to sit down to do their will even, or just want to put things off. Or does anyone feel concerned about, gosh, if I do this, maybe it's like bringing things on sooner?
Right. I think that is a challenge. And I feel like the term legacy is, I feel like it packs a lot of emotions in just that word. I really want, my goal is that life documentaries are more normalized. And it doesn't have to be you're doing a life documentary because we think you're going to pass away tomorrow or, anything like that. But it's really just, we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring.
You are going to die someday.
Yes. And I think whenever
and if we
bring
don't
up
record
mortality,
this today or tomorrow.
But it's a hard subject because I think, we don't like to focus on, our mortality and knowing that someday we won't be here, and it's hard. But I feel like it could really be celebrated. So it's really a time to set aside and to really think about your life experiences and your stories that you've had, and just to be proud of where you are. And so I feel like it's just so meaningful for people, and those stories will never get old, and they'll never expire. It won't be like a wedding from the 1980s or something, when you have this big hair and stuff. I mean, and that doesn't expire either, but, but I feel like,
I don't know.
Stories will always be, they will never expire, and they will never go out of style. So
no, another big pitch for it is that, people sometimes think, well, I'm going to write down things that are important. That can take a lot of work, and some people are really intimidated about the writing process. So it's like, you don't have to write a letter to everybody. You don't have to write down what's important. Let's just talk,
right?
And we'll just talk, and you don't have to worry about spelling and punctuation and grammar. Let's just talk.
Yes,
and
that's really what it is. It's just a conversation.
Let's just have a conversation.
Yes, and it's just talking about, what was your childhood like, or simple things. What was your favorite meal that your mom made, or things like that just kind of bring up those memories. And I also encourage families to get together and take out those boxes of photos that are, have a layer of dust on them, and really go through those old photos too. And people love to look at old photos, and it jogs their memory on stories that they've had. And so I include those in their documentary as well, to kind of tell their complete story of their life.
Yeah, the whole relationship we have to photos is kind of, I think about that often. So I'm 70 years old, grew up at a time, like, the number of photos of me, before I got to school, probably fewer than 20. And now, oh my gosh, so 20 photos an hour of kids going. I mean, so photos were special, were put in an album, were tucked away.
Actually printed out. Yes.
And now there are so many photos that their value has diminished in some ways. Things that are rare, we value. Things that are plentiful, we lose sight of.
Yes.
So how do you, your mom and dad or grandpa, photos of your grandpa compared to photos of you as a kid? You're young enough that the digital photo taken with phones probably came into existence.
I'm a little older than that. But thank you.
Okay, well, how about your kids? Photos of your kids compared to photos
of my kids. And even as a photographer, I don't print my photos out like I should, but because they live on hard drives, and and it's not good.
It's so hard drives don't become like 8 tracks, and we can no longer play them.
So, but it's so important to have that picture. And recently I was able to sit down with my grandparents who live in Vegas. And I sat down with them, and I was intentional about asking about their story and their childhood. And we went through photos, and it's so fun to do that, and to get together with family and to hear these stories that I've never heard of before, and to see these pictures that you can hold. There's something just really valuable about having these printed photos. And I could just really geek out over it, but it's so fun just to hear new stories. I think from family that you feel like, oh, I know who they are, and I know their stories, but there's so much more that you don't know unless you intentionally ask those specific questions.
Yeah. So if someone wants to create a life documentary that will live on beyond them. What's the process?
So I like to. It kind of depends on what somebody's goal is for their legacy. So if they want, other family members in the video with them, that's definitely a possibility. But really, it would be in the setting of their own home. I like to film in their own home just because it's their own environment and they're comfortable. Um, so it takes an hour to 2 hours or so, and we have basically a conversation. I do like to talk with people beforehand and just kind of get a feel of who they are and what is important to them, so I can kind of tailor those questions then for each individual. But then it's just taking those old photos and if they have any home videos, and just to get those together as well, and then I edit everything, and it's a documentary then about their life.
And are you, is the most common situation is that you're having the conversation with them and asking the question? Is that a more common scenario than you've got two people, a family member having the conversation with them?
More common with just the single person.
Okay.
I know I've done sessions where I take the family separate, because I feel like people are more open about their feelings when they don't have, necessarily their whole family there watching them, where they can be honest with me, and we can just have that more natural flow of conversation. Because sometimes our family and friends, I feel like, are our worst critics, and so it's sometimes is nice to have people by themselves where we can have an open conversation. And I'm not biased at all. So I am completely open to hearing people's stories, and I there's no judgments, at all. So, so I feel like people are very open to talking about their lives. And
then does the subject have, editorial say? Do they have get involved in the editing process?
If there's anything they said and they're like, don't put that in there, then that's okay. I'll say, okay, we'll cut that out. But I would say, that's the main thing. And I never share anything that is, because sometimes we have some really deep, personal conversations. And so it's really up to that person on, hey, I don't really want to share that, and that's okay. And because it's their life, and it's their story. So I would say they do have some say in what they want in their video, and I'm completely open to that.
In your experience, do most of them are the videos left to be shown to the family after they pass, or do they start sharing them instantly?
Everybody's different. So I think sometimes it might take a little bit of time for somebody to actually open the link to the video, or to actually watch it. I think it just depends on where they're at in their journey, and kind of what they have going on, if that makes sense. So I've had it both ways.
Technology being what it is, it probably doesn't require a huge amount of big lighting and big microphones and big cameras. Or
it does, actually.
Oh,
yes.
okay.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. But I feel like, everybody can record their stories. And so, we all have cell phones. And so I think it's such a great way to make sure that your family has, if you don't have to have a huge camera to do it, you can make it simple and record something with just your phone if you want.
But you do a more high-end production with lighting
I
and
do.
higher quality microphones. You're not just doing your phone.
My cell phone, yeah.
Okay.
I'm not. You could almost do it with the iPhone, though, anymore, right?
It's just amazing, the quality, but you actually bring in lighting and a more professional sound and
I do.
video recording.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. So I clean everything up when I leave. So I don't, I'll sometimes move furniture and stuff around, but I'll move it back to where it was.
Do you need a tech crew and best boys and grips and
maybe someday would be nice, right? But no, I like to keep it more of an intimate setting where, I set everything up. I really just want that person to feel comfortable and not feel like a lot of people are watching them and judging what they're saying. And so it's just me. I set everything up, beforehand, and then we just have a conversation, and it's amazing. I mean, people are amazing, and especially people that have gone through something serious. I feel like their perspective really changes and what's important in life, and we have these just amazing conversations, which I just love.
We have a short video that you brought. I think we'll play that now. That kind of gives a little bit of an example. This maybe set it up for us, Brittany. These are like clips out of different people's life documentaries.
They are. It explains the life documentaries a little bit. So it's a couple examples of some sessions that I have done.
Okay.
These documentaries give people an opportunity to reflect upon all the amazing life experiences and stories they hold, while also giving them the comfort of knowing their legacy will live on.
After all the smoke clears and the funeral's over and everything's gone or whatever, I wanted something that showed, I guess, my personality for them to have, rather than just maybe some pictures that were taken of me on the phone, because there's also less and less pictures of mom in the pictures, because you're constantly taking pictures of everybody else. You're the one running the camera, so there's less and less of you, and there's definitely less video of mom. And I want them not to just have pictures. I want them to remember what my voice sounds like and how I talk and the way I think about things, even if it is only in one video.
Documentaries encourage people to reminisce about the powerful life stories and milestones in their lives through compassionate interviewing and questioning.
Planned of experiences.
I encourage them to remember times such as childhood experiences, memorable family vacations, the birth of their children, or their first date with their spouse.
I am going to marry this man. I told her that. I knew it on our first date. We've been together ever since.
When someone is diagnosed with a serious or terminal illness, it can be difficult for the person and their family to find the perfect opportunity to speak outwardly about how much they truly mean to each other.
Willow's my first grandchild, and Atlas is my second, and Melody's my third. Willow, they're kind of like, I don't want to say second chances, but you can see your kids in them. They're just amazing. It's a different kind of love. I can't even explain it. I didn't think I could love until I had my own kids. And I really didn't think I could love again until I had my grandkids. It's a different kind of love. That Willow, she's the love of my life. They all are. Atlas is ornery, but he's my only grandson. Melody reminds me so much of my mother and my son, Aaron.
Documentary sessions create a perfect environment for families to get together, open up, and tell each other what they are most thankful for and what impacts they have made on each other's lives before it's too late.
I feel like I kind of get a glimpse of how it was when I was little. They, actually both my parents, sometimes they'll call my kids their kids' names, and they have them every weekend. But I guess it's kind of cool to watch. I'm definitely glad, I had a kid at 18, but I'm definitely glad that I did, so I could see her with them.
None of us want to be forgotten. We want our memories to live on far past our lives and to leave a legacy we're proud of. For those who have been impacted by a terminal illness, the desire and urgency to leave a legacy becomes very apparent. With life documentaries, my hope is to encourage people to leave a legacy by capturing their unique stories to pass on to their family and friends, so that their legacy should live on forever.
You bet. What do you need? That's been her.
Well, that was nice. It was so heartwarming. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. How do people get in touch with you if they want to create a life documentary?
So I have a website, positiveemissions.com. So they can get in touch with me that way. I do have a Facebook page. I need to get better at my Facebook social media. That's one of my goals this year. But really, really through the website or at positiveemissions@gmail.com, they can send me a message as well. And so, everybody's needs are different, and everyone wants to leave their legacy, possibly a little bit different than the next. And so it's really just tailoring it to that specific person and that family and what their needs are.
And do you have other ideas for the future, spreading out into, I don't know, what else? Oh,
I also do grandparent sessions as well. And so it's really a time, I think, for, grandkids and kids even to learn more about their family. And so then they always have that documentary of their grandparents too, which is really fun. So and grandparents love to get out those old pictures and
Right.
go through everything.
So
and
it doesn't have to be someone who has a illness that's necessarily going to shorten their life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. I really just want to normalize having documentaries, life documentaries for our family, and not necessarily for celebrities and for influencers, but really they should be for the common people and the ones that are closest to us.
Great. I think we're going to
So-
open up to questions
Okay.
and answers. So we got a live studio audience, and we'll start with questions, and then we also. Oh, so we already have a question.
The
so
cost, yes.
Miriam wants to know, what's the cost of doing a life documentary?
That is a very good question. So, so it really depends on. I have a couple different sessions that I offer. It really depends on what is best for the family and what's best for the person. I will say it's a lot cheaper than wedding photography, even. So, something that you can always share with your family and for future generations. So, nothing against wedding photography. I shot a lot of weddings. But I feel like this is something that really benefits so many generations
So what's
and
the
so many
bargain
people.
basement price for the
It
least
starts
complicated?
it starts around $750.
Okay, $750.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks for answering that
Yes.
directly. Other questions?
Yes. So do you have questions when you get together with the grandkids and the grandparents? Do you have questions that you bring up that the kids ask, or just the kids just ask grandma and grandpa questions?
That's a good question. I have a master list question, which has tons of questions on it that I can pull. But I like to talk with the family beforehand and say, what do you want to know about your grandparent? Are there any specific stories that you really cherish and that you want recorded? So I think I like to keep the questions open for the families too, where they can they can have some say in what is asked, and so the family really benefits from that video.
Hello. Actually, Facebook reminds me of my cancer journey, because I really boldly went out there and, because when people think, oh, you got cancer, it's like a private matter. But I said, there's a reason I had to come on Facebook. It's not just the good, trying to get through it, but also expressing, how you're feeling. And so it ended up reaching out to some other people that just got diagnosed. So it in a way, it did help. And I just got reminded a year ago yesterday, I started my radiation treatment.
Okay.
And I was like, wow. And Dr. Deming was my doctor.
And Facebook reminded you of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was like
Get it,
going,
yeah.
wow, yes,
Here's
I
where
remember.
you were a year from
25 of the cancer treatment. And the thing was, in relationship to the people that I got to know, the tech there, what helped me was they had music going, and I have such great anxiety, and it wasn't working for 3 days. And the tech went out of her way and says, just to let you know, we got it working. And I don't know how we got in the discussion about nuns. We're joking about nuns. I kid you not. When I got on that table, Highway to Hell came on from AC/DC. And I said, okay, Sister Margaret Mary's got connections up there, I'll tell you. So we never made jokes about nuns after that. But, and you do form a relationship with the radiation tech people. And so I cherish that. So when you guys were mentioning that, I wanted to plug that in. But yes, and things like that. If people have, which I think is actually a good price, but do you recommend other methods of people trying to utilize and chronicling other than Facebook or other social media?
To record their stories.
Yes.
I always think that journaling is a great way too. But it's nice to have those reminders where, when you started your journey with radiation, it's scary and everything is unknown. But then looking now when you're completed and you think how far I've come in this year. And so it is amazing having those reminders. And your story is still going. And so, so Facebook is great, I think. And, social media can be great. Those great reminders, of the amazing things that we've gone through and the things that we've done.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else? Okay.
Oh, we have a question here from the audience. I can really feel how much you care about this and how deep your passion is. What's your background in understanding end-of-life clients to make them feel so comfortable? Maybe I missed that in the first few minutes, but can you explain that? So, yeah, we did talk about that in the first few minutes, but please share, how did you come to be so comfortable around individuals that might have a shortened lifespan?
I think it's the life experiences that I have had and that I've gone through. And actually, my husband a few years ago was diagnosed with a serious illness. It's HLH. And he almost died. And so I feel like it's all these life experiences that I've had with, going through treatments, working in the cancer field, being a caregiver then to somebody, and he had 8 weeks of chemo. My husband did. And so I feel like it's all these things that have kind of come together, and have led me to this point.
Yes.
And it's just made me really realize that we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, and to really enjoy those micro moments of the day, really those small things that really bring us joy throughout the day. And sometimes I have to remind myself that when my husband leaves like a wet towel or something on the bed, and it drives me nuts. But I'm like, gosh, we went through this period of time where we didn't know if he was going to make it, and it was scary. And so taking a step back and realizing that, and just making sure that I'm not taking things for granted, and to tell people how you really feel, and how much they really mean to you, I feel like is so important, because we just don't know what tomorrow is going to bring.
Right. And the person who wrote that question probably missed the very beginning. Your career as a radiation therapy technologist, taking care of patients with cancer, and also prior to that, your own treatment, a tumor that you had in the treatment. So it's kind of like your life has been leading up to this, your own personal illness, the number of years you spent taking care of cancer patients and their family, and then thanks for sharing your husband's illness.
Yes, and he's doing great.
And he's
now.
doing well.
Yeah, he saw Dr. Hedinger, and they started chemo right away. And that was when our youngest was 3 months old, and so I was just going back to work, and I was just off of maternity leave, and it was a character building time. So
have you done your own grandparents? Obviously, you told us about recording your grandpa's voice. How about your other grandparents? Have you done grandparent videos?
I did, yes. And it was so fun. I just had this time just with them. And it really strengthened our relationship. And I think as you get older, you really start to get interested in their stories. And it's been a really amazing experience. And I feel like it's really made us a lot closer. And actually, I had my parents sit down and I recorded their stories too. And
Right, because they're grandparents.
they are
They're-
grandparents. And this year, my dad had, I feel like all these things have happened to my family members. He had his aorta had actually burst, and they were on vacation, and statistically he shouldn't have made it. They were in the middle of Missouri, like in the middle of nowhere. And so his story would take probably another hour. I could tell you about it, but he survived, and we spent a lot of time in that hospital
in Missouri.
And it was actually in Arkansas then, where he was transferred to the hospital. But he was in ICU on a ventilator, and we were told several times during his surgery that he had, he's probably not going to make it. And so the chaplain had come out, and it's never good when the chaplain is looking for your family. He was wonderful, but you never want to be really seeked out in the hospital by a chaplain. But he has really persevered through the year. And that's just really also solidified my passion for these legacy videos, and just spending that time with family while you can, and asking them those important questions, because if you don't ask those questions, you'll never know. So, so that's definitely been a big passion of mine that has grown very deeply in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I bet that you will forever cherish those and your kids. When you did your parents or the grandparents for your children, were the children involved in the videos?
They were not.
Okay.
They were not. My kids aren't very good for me in front of the camera.
They need a more neutral director.
I can't, like, if I had a couple other arms, where I could probably get them, but no, it's
they're
kind
too
of
familiar
difficult.
with the director.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, they do not listen to the director very well. So, so they were not in theirs. But I know my dad had made a comment, and he said, "Well, this seems a little premature, but I guess we'll talk about this." But I did learn a lot of things about my parents too. These stories that I had never heard of before, and so it was really interesting to really be intentional about asking those questions, and I just think there's so much more we can learn about each other. So
yes, there's a time for stories to come out. I just thinking back, my grandmother lived quite late. It wasn't until grandma died at age 92 that some of the stories then came out about my grandma that never would have come out while she was alive.
No. Was it crazy then to learn of those stories and to think?
Yeah, but I don't think that she would have told those stories had we had a camera, and she didn't tell them. She never told them, but there's stories that don't come out till someone passes.
Then they surface, and then
they surface.
Yes.
So,
now, who would you go back and sit down and chat with if you could go back with and sit with a family member? Who would you sit with and ask them questions?
Yeah. So, I practice narrative medicine, so I ask a lot of these questions in getting to know patients. So for the first time, I set aside an hour, but I would say that part of my story, my mom died at age 52 of cancer, and she had a 7-year lifespan, and I was in high school through the beginning of medical school, but it was a very different time, the late 60s and 70s. And so you mostly just didn't talk about it. And if someone started to express some thoughts about dying, well, don't, that's just, everything's going to be okay. So I would say that. And then my dad also died at age 52, but it was sudden death. But at age 52, without an illness, you don't think about. I mean, it can happen as a plane ahead automobile. But so, yeah, there's never a wrong time
Right.
to do this. You don't have to have a terminal illness to be able to sit down and sort of share some of these memories. And you think of times where families get together for a holiday and there's, stories that are going. Now, not all of them are true.
Right. As the day goes on, it's like,
but they still might be worthy of recording and listening to.
right.
And even, your funny uncle who tells jokes. I mean, even recording some of those
Exactly.
can be something that brings joy as you listen to them.
And I think it's one of those things where you think you can always, I'm always going to remember their voice, or I'm going to remember this, but as time goes on, it sometimes will fade. And so, so what a great reason then to record those stories.
Well, this has been wonderful. So again, Brittany Overton and your company's Positive Emissions, and the website is positiveemissions.com. So, and we've been talking about creating a life documentary. So thank you for being part of it. And thanks everybody for listening. If you know someone that would like to hear this conversation, it's going to be available at the Above and Beyond Cancer YouTube channel beginning tomorrow. And it also will be available on the Mercy One Cancer Center website. Thanks again for joining us, and please join us again next week. Thanks, everybody.